Hey y'all, my name is Liam Wiesenberger. I'm a product designer with 3 years of industry experience, a bachelor's in computer science, and a master's in information, and I'm here today to break down the design of online social spaces. Let's start with the past. So, you might have heard of something called Web 2.0 or Web 3.0. We're going back to Web 1.0. This is referring to a version of the internet that was static as opposed to dynamic and read-only as opposed to read and write. When we say Web 1.0, we're usually talking about the internet in the 1990s to the early 2000s. Let's take a look at this website as an example. The reason that I wanted to use this as an example of a Web 1.0 website is that it's not interactive at all. This is not a social space. This is a site for tutorials. And we have sites for tutorials today, but oftentimes they'll include comment sections, reactions, ratings. None of that is here. This is really just links to different read-only content. It's static, it's not inherently social, and it's read-only. Now, after Web 1.0, we had, you guessed it, Web 2.0. In contrast to Web 1.0, Web 2.0 is characterized by user-generated content, which is, you guessed it, content generated by users. It can be anything from comments to pictures to videos. A lot of things on the internet today are considered user-generated content, even if they're not online social spaces. So, for example, a tutorial website that exists on Web 2.0, like I mentioned, might have a comment section or ratings. So let's take a look at an online social space in Web 2.0. This is Reddit. Now, if you've never used Reddit, it's called the front page of the internet, and it's divided into different communities called subreddits around a particular topic. And within a subreddit, you'll see posts, and those posts will have comments. Here's an example of a post in the r/books subreddit. By the way, yes, I'm using an X-Acto knife for this because I wanted to add an element of danger to this video. So here you'll see a typical kind of comment thread that might exist beneath a post in Reddit. One thing that I really want you to notice here is how the comments are nested inside of one another. So here are one level of comments. You can see a response from one comment to another. You can also see that there's 60 more replies under this, 7 more replies under this, 66 more replies under this. There's nested threading going on. And what's beautiful about this design decision is that it allows for actual discourse to happen on Reddit. Reddit is a place where you can get your questions answered thoroughly, and there can actually be online discussion. So with the nesting idea, if you were to click 7 more replies here, you would see something like this. So here's the expanded view of the replies. And as you can see, there's even another layer here where you could open up more replies here and more replies here. I'm not going to open them all up. I just want to show you an example of nested threading because not all social sites have this kind of design. And in Reddit's case in particular, it allows for really thorough discussion and analysis. I'd like to point out that mobile-first technologies struggle with nested threading because of real estate. It takes a lot of horizontal space to properly show nested threads and all the comments in their context. You can see how much less elegant it is in Reddit's app as opposed to its desktop experience. I imagine this is why a lot of technologies that focus on the mobile experience and the app don't have nested threading and just have straight comments or one level of threading. Another thing I want you to notice is these numbers under the comments. This is the delta between the upvotes and the downvotes. So the more upvotes for every downvote you have, the higher this number is. This helps Reddit prioritize which comments to show you. The same is true for posts. Reddit calls these points karma, and they're kind of what makes the whole ecosystem work. Posts and comments with more upvotes get more visibility and therefore more traction. And users that get more upvotes get more karma. Here's an example of showing someone's profile. So here you can see the username, you can see when they joined, and you can see how much karma they have. So in this case, they've gotten 13 more upvotes than downvotes for their posts, and 45,000 more upvotes than downvotes for their comments. Karma doesn't actually translate to money or anything material for a Reddit user, but it is a way to motivate the kind of behaviors that you want. In other words, pro-social behaviors on a social platform. This is just the homepage for the r/books subreddit, which again is a community of people interested in books on Reddit. One thing I want to point out here is that there's rules. There's very clear rules delineated for anyone on the homepage of it, and this is a way for the community to be effective online. One thing I want to point out here is that incivility will be met with a warning and repeat offenders will be banned. The ability to enforce the rules and ban users is something that gives moderators a good amount of power on Reddit. In contrast to some other social sites that we'll take a look at, there are basically different levels of authority on Reddit, and different people have different ways of maintaining the social space online. Regular users might just upvote and downvote, and moderators may be able to take more serious actions like banning users. Is Reddit a perfect online platform? Absolutely not. It's had its own controversies, problems, and stereotypes. However, I think as a designed system, it is extremely effective in creating good online discourse through its nested commenting, upvote and downvote karma, and use of moderators for online moderation. I'm actually not going to throw these because I might have to film stuff again. So I'm going to put these down in the pile. All right, next up we've got YouTube. Up here we have a screenshot of the end screen of a YouTube video. Specifically Mike's Mike, shout out, one of my favorite channels, so funny. Two things I want to point out are YouTube's recommendation algorithm and YouTube's autoplay feature. The recommendation algorithm basically recommends videos to you based on videos you've already watched. So these are all recommended to me, as well as this video that's about to play right here. Also, autoplay. At the end of this video, it has a timer that says up next in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the default action here, the call to action button is play now, and the secondary action button is cancel. YouTube wants you to keep watching. YouTube makes its money by keeping your attention on the website and watching advertisements. Makes total sense. Where this gets a little bit tricky is in how addictive online extremist content can be. Often the most entertaining videos are also the most controversial and have the, how do I put this, hottest takes. And if you're constantly being recommended videos with really hot takes, or some might say politically extreme takes, you might keep clicking on those videos and keep watching them and keep falling down a rabbit hole. This is exacerbated by the autoplay function as well. Because YouTube wants to keep you online and it's designed to keep you online, you have to do the effort as a user to find your way out. And not only find your way out of the site itself, but also find your way out of potentially dangerous or extremist content. One of the ways that YouTube helps with that is with these interesting little banners. So if you were to search something like 9/11 conspiracy, which who doesn't? You will get your regular results. However, you'll also get this blue banner at the top, which will give you something that says context, as well as a link to Encyclopedia Britannica about the historical event. I think this is a really interesting design decision because they basically hard-coded a response in their results, which is very unusual for a YouTube result. And they really prioritized it by putting it at the very top of the page and giving it this light blue background. It isn't a huge call to action in that there is a little click element here, which is much smaller than the click targets of the videos themselves underneath it, but it's right at the top. It's the only thing on the page that's that shade of blue, and it really calls your attention. That being said, it doesn't stop you from scrolling on, it doesn't hide any other content, but it does give you some information. And on a video itself, it'll also have some elements like that. So this is a video about COVID-19 vaccines. It'll have a little blue box, again, the same shade of blue, saying COVID-19 vaccine, get the latest information from the CDC. And then here the action is this learn more, also in a blue. It's a little bit deprioritized, so it's off to the right as opposed to the left. And again, it doesn't hide the comment section, but it definitely pushes them down quite a bit. This plus this is quite a bit of real estate, because it also has this extra bit right here, which is saying in regards to the channel, that it's from a channel with a health professional licensed in the US. So it's basically saying you can trust this channel. And again, it's given that same visual treatment, but it doesn't have an exact kind of call to action. There is a click if you want to learn more, but it's really deprioritized with that light gray and the small text. And again, it doesn't hide the comments, it just pushes them down a little bit and calls your attention with this light blue that has clearly been attributed to these types of warnings or info bubbles, whatever you want to call them. I think YouTube is a really interesting place for social discussion. The platform itself is so social in that you are putting videos onto the internet, but also the comment sections. In contrast to Reddit, they only have one level of replying, but videos themselves also have upvotes and downvotes, which are a way to vote on what kind of content is best on the platform. YouTube's also a strange place where it's a mix of education and entertainment. Oftentimes, videos that are really educational aren't that entertaining. And oftentimes videos that are really entertaining aren't that educational. And sometimes videos that are both are not exactly, how do you say, true. Okay, I know it's called X now, but I'm gonna just call it Twitter for the sake of this video. Next up, we're gonna talk about Twitter. Couple things that I wanna highlight about Twitter. The first is the ability to quote tweet. So we've talked about replying, we've talked about liking. We have not talked about the ability to quote someone else's words and add your own words on top of it or append your own take. I think this is one of the most effective things about Twitter because in contrast to a comment where the post itself or the video itself has to be highlighted in order for the comment to get any attention, on Twitter you can quote something and your quote tweet can get more attention than the original tweet. In this case, there was a news article where there was a man charged with murder and it was quote tweeted by someone being like, hey, here's some information about the person, maybe you should put that information in. The quote tweet got a lot more engagement than the original tweet. The quote tweet had 16,000 retweets and 31,000 likes. And the original tweet only had 273 reposts and 426 likes. Yeah, they'd be called reposts instead of retweets now. Sorry. This is not my language and design video. If you want to talk about language specifics, watch my last one. The ability to quote tweet is really interesting here. It's very different from replying. It's very different from reposting. I think it's its own thing that's super fascinating that allows user-generated content that's almost like remixed or built on somebody else's to be elevated. And here's what it would look like if it was just a reply. Here's a reply saying the same thing that the quote tweet was saying, but it looks like it has much smaller engagement than the quote tweet had. Probably because you have to look at the post and then scroll down in order to see this information. One of the things that X has that Twitter didn't have is the ability to add a community note, which I think is super interesting. And I don't love everything that Elon Musk has done with X, but this I think has some legs. Here's an ad for a game. Escape and fight. Who doesn't want to do those things? Basically, it's just an ad for a game. Although I will say, it is hard to tell what is an ad because look at this. It's in the right side of your screen at the top, tiny, tiny letters. This very, very, very gray text. Like you have to be looking for whether something's an ad in order to know if it's an ad. I digress. This is an ad for a game. You can scroll down on it. Although it's beneath the call to action big play button, you can see here that readers added context. The video shown in the ad is not gameplay found in the game at all, as well as links with more information. I think this is fascinating. It is treated differently than the rest of the page. It exists in this kind of little box that brings your attention to it more readily than just a comment would. And it has this little icon with this color that draws your attention to. And if you click on it, you even get this right here, which is basically your ability to rate the community note. And I think this is super interesting. So someone in the community went along and said, hey, this ad is misleading. You can say whether this is helpful. Yes, somewhat, and no. The ability to moderate the moderator, I think is super interesting. And I wonder how it might continue to scale on X. All right, up next, we're looking at Instagram. This is one of my favorite authors who had a post, and there's a couple different actions you can take on the post. You can like it either by clicking this or double tapping the photo itself. You can comment on it, you can send it somewhere, or you can save it. If we open up the comments, comments here only have likes. So one thing to point out about Instagram is it has only likes, not dislikes. So it's also a voting system, but a slightly different one from Reddit or YouTube. One thing I want to point out is the fact that this is a very shallow design for a commenting section. Not only is there only one kind of level of reply, you have to click on this view more replies to see any replies at all. So if someone says something super untrue, you're not going to see someone refuting it unless you're going and digging for it. If you do click on view 5 more replies, you can in fact see the replies, but there's not like replies to the replies. If you want to reply to a reply, it'll show up in the same thread with the same visual treatment. It won't be indented at all, and it'll just have you at the person where the comment came from. In that sense, it's really hard if you've ever seen like a fight go down, not a fight. If you've ever seen a discussion go down on Instagram, it's hard to follow and it's hard to see who's talking to who and what point is being refuted by what, because it's just this shallow commenting function. And the way that you can engage with a comment, other than liking it, is you can report it or block it. I think this makes a good amount of sense. This is, however, in contrast to Reddit, where the moderators are doing the moderation, Instagram does all of its own moderation. There are no moderators. There's only kind of one level of authority for a user. You can report it to Instagram, not a moderator or anything, but someone who works at Instagram, or you can block them, which is very much an action you can take for you and yourself. No one can stop you from doing it, and that's totally up to you. I want to point out how Instagram deals with certain types of content. So if you search 9/11 conspiracy like you did on YouTube, you actually don't get anything particularly different. It kind of just shows you different posts that have to do with what you searched for. This is a normal result for a search. If you search something like COVID vaccines, this looks more like what we got on YouTube. There's a very prioritized section up here with a very clear, very compelling call to action. Go to website for more vaccine info. And then it recommends some trusted resources. You actually have to click on the secondary action all the way down here to see more results, to see the thing that you searched for. You have all of this Instagram recommended information. If you click see more results, then after all of it, you will get these other things. Instagram does deprioritize certain unsavory content on its website in a way that is different from YouTube's, in that you have an extra click in the way, and also quite different from Reddit in the sense that your results are not being filtered by community engagement. They're being filtered by how Instagram wants to serve it to you. That being said, there is almost certainly a step of prioritization from the popularity. So this is probably like the most popular account about COVID vaccines, which is why it's the top result right here. But that's not immediately obvious to you. Unlike with Reddit, you can see like the ticker with how much karma someone has or how many points a post is getting. This has no information next to it for you to be like, oh, this many people found it helpful or not helpful. And Instagram is really about pictures. And Meta has said time and time again that they're really about creative people, not necessarily trying to be a news platform or like an online discussion platform. And guess what? Their design reflects that completely. One of the main things I want you to take away from this video is the power that design has in shaping online discourse. The architecture in which we exist online and interact with each other in those spaces is designed. All of the decisions around how things are commented on, liked, engaged with, moderated are design decisions, and those design decisions change how democracy works on the internet and therefore in the real world. If you want to elevate certain voices or disadvantage others, design can help you do that. And different platforms have different reasons for making their decisions. Reddit really wants to be a place for discussion and front page news and the place to get your most accurate information. Instagram wants to serve you pretty pictures and keeps you online. YouTube wants to be entertaining and educational. All of their design decisions in some way or another intersect with their business decisions and lead to the experience that you have in that tool. I want you to think about design next time you interact with an online social space. What levers did a designer create? How did they design it? And what kind of actions do you think they're trying to reward or mitigate? So this was a video all about the design of online social spaces, led by yours truly, Liam, the product designer. I hope you enjoyed it. And you know what? If anyone gives me a hard time for my if anyone in the comments gives me a hard time for the tripod visible in the shot, you're gonna hear from my lawyers. I'm not Architectural Digest. I want to be clear. I want to be. You see the books, you see the mug, you see the little pad thing. I couldn't figure out how to get a bird's eye view at the same time as me talking to you without this being in the shot, so you're gonna have to deal with it. But hey, do you like my bug on the wall?